Welcome to Module 8 on SquareRoots. Right now, pause the video, find a writing utensil and a piece of paper. A spiral-bound notebook is perfect for what you'll need for this course. If you need help getting a notebook, please let your teacher know today. Note-taking will be important so that you have access to what you're learning without having to rewatch all these videos. Plus, you can use your notes on your quizzes. For Module 8 on square roots, we're going to be finding the square roots of a number. We're going to be estimating a square root. We're going to find square roots of perfect squares with signs, and we're going to be simplifying the square root of a whole number less than 100. So the square root of a number is the number that multiplies times itself to give that number, which I feel like is a really wordy way to describe something. Some numbers are perfect squares, some are not. You cannot find the perfect square of a negative number. So the square root of 16 could either be 4 or it could be -4 because 4 times 4 is 16 and -4 times -4 is 16. We can shorten this by saying plus or minus 4. 12 is not a perfect square. I would have to either estimate it or use my calculator. So you want to make sure you know how to use your square root button on your calculator when you need it. I have to hit the second or the shift button to get to the square root. And the square root of 12 is 3.4641011615. So I'm going to round that to the nearest tenth. So it's 3.5, and it could either be plus or minus 3.5. For the square root of -4, there is no perfect square. The square root of 4 would be 2, but if I do 2 times 2, that gives me +4. If I do -2 times -2, that's also +4. So what I say for that is there are no real roots. Later, you're going to learn about imaginary numbers, but for now, all you need to know is that you cannot find a real square root of a negative number. Perfect squares are products of a number times itself. It's important for you to know some of the smaller perfect squares, especially anything below 100 you should really be memorizing. Here's the list of some common perfect squares and their positive square roots. You should either screenshot this and save it somewhere, or you should write it down. In particular, I would write this column, and I would go all the way up to at least 100, because you should not have to get out your calculator to find out that the square root of 9 is 3. And don't forget that really each one of these could either be plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus, because it could be the positive or the negative. Just for simplification purposes, they just include the positive on this poster. All right, new topic. Finding all square roots of a number. So see how it says all real square roots? That's your reminder that we're looking for both the positive and the negative root of 100. What they're asking you for here is the square root of 100. Well, it has to be 10 because 10 times 10 is 100, but remember it could either be plus or minus. You try this one on your own by pausing the video. Find the square root of 9. 3 times 3 is 9, so 3 is the square root of 9, and I want to put that as both plus and minus 3. Now, I think in Alex it says to separate them with commas, so you may want to write this as -10, 10, and -3, 3. If you try to write it like this and it counts it wrong, you'll know why. All right, finding all real square roots of -36. So what they're asking you for is the square root of -36. Well, remember, I cannot find the square root of a negative number, so I just say none for that one. You try this one on your own now. You should have also said none for this one. You cannot find the square root of a negative number, so you should say none for that one. Now, you want to pay attention to signs. So new topic, I want you to write square roots with signs and underline it. And we're going to be evaluating the following. Now, I want you to pay attention to whether the square root is on the inside. If it is, then we would say none or not a real number. But if this negative is on the outside, that's telling you to use the negative root. So for example, for the square root of -81, we would say not a real number or none like we did earlier. Just read your directions carefully to know what they're asking you for. But for this one, the negative is on the outside. So the square root of 36 is 6, and they're telling you to just give the negative version of that. You pause the video and try this one on your own. For this one, you should have said not a real number. because the negative is on the inside. But for this one, the square root of 121 is 11, and they're telling you to use the negative version of that. So there is something for that. So you might want to write yourself a note. I would probably write this down in my notes, that the square root of a negative number, there are no real roots for that. If the negative's on the outside, that's just telling you to use the negative version of the root. Now, simplifying square roots. Remember we talked earlier that not everything is a perfect square. So it depends on what they're asking you to do. This does not say estimate or approximate or evaluate. It says to simplify. When you see the word simplify, what they're asking you to do is to find all the perfect square roots that are hidden inside of 80. So I want you to underline this, simplifying square roots, because we've got a new topic now. And I want you to put yourself a note that you're going to use factor trees to do this. Factor trees are going to help us find our perfect squares. So I can make a factor tree for 80. And I always do the same number over and over because what I'm going to look for are pairs, and it's easier for me if I have all the same types of numbers together. So I'm going to do 2 as much as I can. 2 times what gives me 80? Well, 2 times 40 gives me 80. 2 is prime, so I stop. 2 times 20 gives me 40. 2 is prime, so I stop. 2 times 10 gives me 20. 2 is prime, so I stop. And 2 times 5 gives me 10. 2 and 5 are prime, so I stop. And you might want to write yourself a note that pairs are squares. The pairs are your perfect squares. So you have one pair of 2's and another pair of 2's. When you simplify this, those are your perfect squares. Think about it like this. 2 times 2 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. That goes on the outside of your square root. Same thing for that one. 2 times 2 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So you have another 2 on the outside of your square root. And singles stay on the inside. So to simplify this, this becomes 4 times the square root of 5. I'm not sure whether Alex will want you to put the plus or minus in front. If you get this wrong when you do this type, try putting the plus or minus if it lets you and see what happens. You pause the video, try this one on your own, start with trying to make your factor tree. Go ahead and do that now. So 48 should have become 2 times 24. 24 is 2 times 12. 12 is 2 times 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. You're looking for your pairs. You have a pair of 2's, a pair of 2's, but a single 3. The pairs are the perfect squares. They go on the outside. The singles go on the inside. So you should have written this as 4 square root of 3, or if Alex wants it that way, plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3. All right, let's try another one together, and then you'll do another one on your own. For 12, again, I'm doing as many 2's as I can. 12 is 2 times 6, 6 is 2 times 3, and we're done. There's a pair of 2's, so the 2's go on the outside, the 3 goes on the inside. You pause the video and try this one on your own. You should have started by making a tree. 63 is not divisible by 2, but it is divisible by 3, so 63 divided by 3 is 21, and 21 is 3 times 7. So you have a pair of 3's, they go on the outside, and the singles go on the inside. Again, I don't know whether Alex wants the plus or minus there. You'll just have to see when you get to these types of problems. And you're done. That's it for square roots today. This video will be available on Haiku if you need to rewatch, and will be available on each skill for Module 8 in Alex. You should now complete Module 8 practice problems, and I've been hearing that some of you are having trouble finding those. You want to click on Continue My Path. If you go to the quiz, you're not ready for that yet. You want to do the practice problems that are in Alex by clicking Continue My Path. And if you have not finished modules 1 through 7, it's going to force you to do those first. So make sure that you're working your way through those practice problems now. Don't forget that if you need help, you can click on the explanation and even click Y to get more information. After you complete all your stuff by continuing your path, then you're ready for the quiz. You're going to go back to the home page and click on assignments, and you will need to take quiz 8 to match with module 8. Have a great day.